One, and we are recording. And although this is episode 745, you would think I have the technology understood and under wraps. But as Dr. Fox just saw, I'm still figuring this out with every passing day and every passing episode. So, but that's an excuse to make up for my own shortcomings. So with that, Dr. Fox, please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, Tommy. Well, you're way ahead of me on the tech stuff, so I take my hat off to you. Anyway, I'm Richard Fox. I'm a physician in Los Gatos, California. I'm also a California licensed attorney. So during this discussion, I'll I'll be switching hats from time to time, depending on which one fits the best. I also happen to be running for Congress in this election cycle. It's interesting, I'm running in the 16th Congressional District in California, which is currently held by Representative Anna Eshoo, which is significant because she is currently the chair of the House Health Subcommittee. And that committee has oversight jurisdiction over the National Institutes of Health, the NIH, Dr. Fauci, the CDC, and the FDA. And as we'll discuss here, I have a very different approach to how COVID should be managed than she and Dr. Fauci have. So, perhaps Representative Eshoo will want to be on one of your future episodes to respond. Anyway, I would welcome it.
I would love to have her on to respond. I actually just this past weekend got a formal rejection from the office of Dr. Fauci at the NIAID to come on my podcast, and told him I was like I'd love to have you on. I won't attack you. Give you free reign and argue your half. I've never seen him on a podcast format before, and I got a respectful no. So.
Yep. Well, I don't think either one of us are too surprised about that.
No, not at all. But I figured if I have on you and Dr. Malone and Dr. Freed and Dr. McCullough so many times, I need to at least attempt to offer an olive branch and see if you would come on here and talk. And I don't think he had any interest in it. So that's what I get for trying. Now, I've interviewed Dr. Tyson before, who's also running out of California. What exactly would you do, not to immediately throw you on the hot seat, but what would you do that Representative Eshoo would not want to do?
So let me get into that. Sure. As I said, the main issue in my campaign is this COVID catastrophe. It's been a medical catastrophe, a public health catastrophe, an economic catastrophe. So as I said, I'm a physician. I've treated many COVID patients. I have a website. People come to me through my website, and if it's appropriate, we treat them for their COVID, both for prevention and treatment. The drug treatments that I use are those that were pioneered really by Doctors Tyson and Fareed. And as you have noted, there have been a lot of other people who have contributed to that as well, which I should mention: Dr. McCullough, Dr. Merrick, Dr. Corey, Dr. Zelenko, and interestingly, a non-physician entrepreneur, Steve Kirsch, who is also here in Silicon Valley. So I'd like to start by talking a little bit about the COVID infection and how it proceeds. So I'm going to put up a slide here as soon as I find it. Sorry.
No, you were quite all right. Yeah, I was going to say, I think other than Zelensko, I think I've had on everyone you just named. I can't track down Zelensko. So for everybody listening, Dr. Fox is pulling up some slides to walk me through.
Okay, so this is the first one. This is a slide courtesy of Dr. McCullough, who illustrates the three phases of the COVID viral infection. The first one on the left being shown in yellow, the viral proliferation phase. The virus typically comes in through the upper airway, the nose, the mouth,
It's
settles.
Dr. Fox. It's not open on my screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You're quite all right.
So
I can see all the thumbnails, but not the actual. Not it's not like blown up.
all right.
Yeah, you had it pulled up before we start recording.
Yep. Let me
You're quite all right.
let's try this again.
Perfect.
Okay, and so as I said, this is a slide courtesy of Dr. McCullough that shows the three phases of the COVID viral infection. The first being the yellow phase on the left there, the viral proliferation phase, where the virus comes in through the nose, mouth, settles in the throat, and it just grows there for several days. In fact, you may not even realize that you've got it for the first few days. And for some people, they're able, especially if they have some kind of immunity already, they can fight it off at that phase, and that's the end of it. But for many other people, it progresses down from the throat down into the lungs, where you get a sort of a pneumonia, a viral pneumonia, and the virus continues to proliferate in the lungs and spreads into other organs, the heart, kidneys, liver, brain, and the body mounts a fierce inflammatory response to that. And in fact, it's an out of control inflammatory response such that the immune system not only attacks the virus, but it attacks those organs as well. So it will attack the lungs. The lungs get a pneumonia. They are damaged and they can't perform their function of getting oxygen into the blood. People get short of breath, and that's what often takes them to the hospital when they can't breathe and they need extra oxygen. As that viral induced hyperinflammatory response progresses, it actually damages the blood vessels lining, the blood vessels that go through the heart, lungs, liver, and the damage to the blood vessels causes lots of little clots to develop in those blood vessels, and that's that third red phase there, the thrombosis phase, and that can cause heart failure, liver failure, kidney failure. In fact, often does, and that can actually be what actually kills people in the end. So so obviously the best way to approach this would be to try to treat this infection as early as possible in that viral proliferation phase before your organs have become damaged. But there's a lot of controversy about that. Dr. Fauci doesn't recognize early treatment. So early on, he was studying, he and the people at the NIH were studying a drug called remdesivir, which is a patent medicine that has to be given intravenously, and therefore could only be used once people are in the hospital. He funded studies of that drug, a drug made by a company called Gilead. And they were doing those studies early in 2020. And about the time that Dr. Fauci was ready to announce that there was some benefit to remdesivir, came reports from France, from Dr. Rolt, that there was a better treatment with a inexpensive pill that could be taken in the early viral proliferation phase, the pill called hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine had been around for many, many decades, widely used in the United States to treat arthritis. I know people who've been treated with hydroxychloroquine for arthritis. It's very safe, very easy to take. Dr. Rolt and his colleagues showed that COVID could be treated with that. And that was a big problem for Dr. Fauci. You'd think he would welcome that news, but actually it interfered with his plans for remdesivir, because remdesivir was not FDA approved, whereas hydroxychloroquine was. The FDA has a rule that they can't approve a new experimental treatment like remdesivir if there's already an FDA approved drug around like hydroxychloroquine that will treat the problem. And there was also some tension between Dr. Fauci and President Trump at the time, because you may remember that the president said he was taking hydroxychloroquine to prevent COVID infection for himself. So at about that time, a very curious thing happened. There was a paper that appeared in a very prestigious medical journal called The Lancet. The first author was a Harvard professor, Dr. Mandeep Mehra. And I'm sure that's how it even got published in The Lancet. It was curious because Dr. Mehra was a cardiologist who had no experience with infectious diseases. And the paper was interesting because it claimed that they had a database of information on 100,000 patients with COVID from 671 hospitals around the world in 6 continents, some treated with hydroxychloroquine and others not. And according to this database, hydroxychloroquine didn't work to treat COVID. And besides that, it caused irregular heartbeats. So that was a story ran prominently on the Washington Post, the New York Times, created quite a stir at the time because this was the drug that President Trump was using. But anyway, a very curious thing happened with that very famous paper, that there were experts in the area who were skeptical about this paper because they weren't aware that there was this database of the 100,000 patients, and they were experts in the area. So rumors started to circulate questioning this. So as those rumors circulated, a few days later, Dr. Fauci got in front of the TV cameras at CNN to tout the results of this study. And he said, see, this proves that hydroxychloroquine that's being recommended by President Trump, this proves that it doesn't work. And besides that, it's harmful. Well, the next day after Dr. Fauci had gotten in front of CNN, came an open letter from 120 of the world's leading infectious disease statisticians saying that we just don't believe this Lancet paper. We don't believe there's this data out there, and can you please show us the data? Well, that caused quite a controversy among the people following the story in the medical field. And the upshot of it was that Dr. Mera and the other authors of the paper couldn't produce the data. In fact, it turned out it was fraudulent. It had been made up out of whole cloth. It wasn't just that it was a little bit exaggerated or anything like that. It was completely made up. So the Lancet had to publish a retraction of the paper. Now, you would think that maybe at that point, Dr. Fauci would have reversed himself and said, well, maybe we do need to look at this after all, but not at all. In fact, a week or two later, his NIH COVID guideline committee got together and really adopted the results of the Lancet study, even though it had been retracted. They adopted that in their guidelines, saying that hydroxychloroquine was not to be used and that it was dangerous. Now, the Washington Post and the New York Times gave very little coverage to the retraction of that story, needless to say. If I can go on a little bit about this paper, because I think it's very, very interesting.
Sure.
So I'm going to show my next slide here, I hope. So, Tommy, do you have this slide now? Did that come up okay?
Yes, sir.
So in the top bar is a couple of photos of Dr. Mera. And this is an interesting report. I got it off the internet. And it shows that he has a cousin by the name of Unique Mera. That's the guy in the blue shirt in the lower left-hand corner. The report is that Unique Mera is Dr. Mera's cousin. And the report further is that Unique Mera is married to a woman named Jayati Khanna Mera. And Jayati Mera turns out to be the executive vice president for human resources for the Gilead Corporation that makes the remdesivir drug. Now, in his disclosures in his Lancet article, Dr. Mera forgot to mention that he was reportedly related by marriage to Gilead. Another interesting thing when I dug into this a little more was that it turned out that Dr. Mera had presented a paper on COVID at a symposium sponsored by Gilead a couple months before his Lancet paper came out. And it was clearly sponsored by Gilead. It was right there on the program announcement. So typically in a sponsored symposium like that, the experts presenting those papers usually get some kind of an honorarium or stipend or other. If that's the case, and Dr. Mera got some kind of a stipend for participating in Gilead's forum, he didn't mention that in his disclosures in his Lancet paper either, which he certainly should have done. So Dr. Mera had a lot of problems going here. One, he authored a paper out of fabricated data that had to be retracted, and he had at least one confirmed conflict of interest that he did not mention, and probably a second one. So I was so interested in that conflict that he had that I actually wrote a inquiry to the press office at the Brigham and Women's Hospital where Dr. Mera works, asking him if it was indeed true that his cousin was married to a highly placed executive at Gilead. Just like your inquiry of Dr. Fauci, I didn't get an answer to my inquiry either. And I think I'm inclined to the lawyer side of me is inclined to think that when people don't bother to deny serious incriminating accusations, that means that there may be some truth to those. So anyway, moving on. The next point I'd like to cover is that a month or two after the hydroxychloroquine paper came out, there was another paper that came out that I found very interesting. And this one is from Iran. And what they did was they had a lot of COVID patients who were admitted to the hospital. And what they did was they tested their vitamin D levels for all these people and then watched to see what happened to them. And so the dark red circles on this graph are the people who died, and the open circles are the ones who survived. And the vertical axis there is their vitamin D level. So you can see that most of the people who died had vitamin D levels less than 30. And conversely, if you had a vitamin D level of 40 or more, you were in pretty good shape. The only people who died with levels over 40 were a couple of people who were in their 80s. There have been quite a few other papers on vitamin D and COVID that have shown pretty much the same thing, that vitamin D is highly protective. Vitamin D, of course, you don't need any prescription for that. A lot of people take it already. A lot of people figured this out, and they've been taking vitamin D all along during this COVID epidemic. Now, now this is really pertinent to certain non-white populations around the world, because it turns out vitamin D is made in your skin when sunlight falls on your skin. People who have darker skin just don't make vitamin D as efficiently, particularly if they're not at, not around the equator where the sun shines most intensely. Non-white people at higher levels of latitude are often vitamin D deficient. This is a study from the CDC, actually, in which they looked at those who had vitamin D levels less than 20. That's the red bars. The orange bars are those from 20 to 40, and the green bars are those above 40. As we saw from the Iranian paper, if you want to stay healthy from COVID, you want to be in that green bar population over 40. As you can see here, among Black Americans, only 3% are in that healthy group above 40, and 63% are at high risk because they're below 20. In the middle of the graph, we have the Hispanic population, which is kind of intermediate. There's still a third of them are in that high risk group in the red bar, and only 2% of them are in the well-protected group at 2%. And in fact, even among white people, you can see that only 15% of them have levels above 40. So this was known very early on, and this involved a completely non-controversial drug, vitamin D. It's over the counter. Why wasn't Dr. Fauci talking about this? Particularly because the experience was that, I'll get the next slide here. People of color, which is that red box over there on the right, when you looked at their COVID rates, particularly for hospitalization and death, they were actually much higher than those for Asian and and non-Hispanic white folks. So this is something that they could have done very early on at little or no cost, would have saved many thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of lives. The data was well known to the CDC, and I can't for the life of me figure out why they didn't get on top of this. They seem to be completely focused on vaccines and remdesivir. And they could have done this, particularly the vitamin D, that was available long before the vaccines were available. And perhaps we'll talk about it in a future podcast, but the vaccines have a lot of side effects and dangers, and vitamin D just doesn't have that. The other point I could make about this is the CDC's failure to warn people of color about their increased risk that could be prevented by simply by vitamin D. Will remind a lot of Black folks of the huge scandal from the CDC that was the Tuskegee experiment.
Mm-hmm.
That was back in the 1930s and 40s, where they had several hundred Black folks, I think in Alabama, men with syphilis that they were following. And when penicillin became available to treat their syphilis, the CDC simply didn't treat them because they just wanted to see what would happen to them if they weren't treated. It's a huge scandal. And that only involved a few hundred Black folks. Obviously, the failure to tell people about the Black folks about their risks from vitamin D deficiency involved, many tens and hundreds of thousands of deaths. It's unconscionable. So then a few months later, we began to get some reports of from Dr. Corey and others about the usefulness of ivermectin. Ivermectin has been around for decades, widely used around the world, particularly in subtropical Africa, where they have a lot of problems with certain parasites. It's been a wonder drug for treating those people. Ivermectin actually won a Nobel Prize for the people who invented it in 2015. It's so safe, so effective, and so widely used. It's one of the World Health Organization's, top 10 essential medications. When Dr. Corey tried to bring this to the attention of the Dr. Fauci and the NIH, they just brushed him off and said, well, we're not convinced by your data, so we're not going to recommend it. And so in this graph, we can see the timeline of COVID cases in the United States starting in February, March of 2020. You can see there was a huge spike at the end of 2020, a small spike in the spring of 2021, and a bigger spike in the fall of 2021. That's the black bar. The yellow-green bar is the experience in India. Now, India has different seasons than the US, so we wouldn't expect their graph to line up with ours. But as you can see, in the spring of 2021, India started to have a major outbreak of COVID. Now, India, fortunately for them, was not burdened by having Dr. Fauci and the NIH in charge. They had some other people in charge there, and they had seen the ivermectin data, and they were convinced by it. And India rolled out a massive campaign to get all of their positive COVID positive cases treated with ivermectin. The ivermectin campaign started on April 28th in India, and that's where that arrow is. And you can see that the COVID problem in India was promptly extinguished by that. So let's look at India's, India really got on top of this. They actually came up with a COVID kit. This picture is courtesy of Dr. Malone. And you can see that the important piece of this is the drug ivermectin. It also had vitamin D in it, which we've just talked about. Zinc, also very important. So India rolled this kit out very widely. According to Dr. Malone, they didn't, supposedly, the people in the US asked India not to make this kit widely known because apparently he had trouble getting a picture of it and had to get it somehow from somebody that he knew in India, but it wasn't, you couldn't readily access this information in the US. So India had a very broad campaign. They went out into the community. Here we have a Meals on Wheels van on a street corner. You didn't have to go to the doctor's office. You didn't have to get a prescription. They treated this like a emergency and wanted to get this treatment out as quickly as possible, and they did, and it was very effective. In marked contrast to the US, where Dr. Fauci and the CDC and the FDA threw every roadblock that they could come up with in the way of people getting their COVID treated. So here's the results. This is per capita deaths, COVID-19 deaths per million population. The United States is on the left and India is on the right. So in the United States has one of the highest per capita COVID death rates in the world. India has one of the lowest. I find this to be very, very convincing. Dr. Fauci apparently still isn't convinced. Makes you wonder what it would take to convince him about that. So you might wonder, well, maybe India accomplished that with vaccinations. Maybe the ivermectin wasn't the key to it. So this is a timeline of India's experience with COVID vaccinations. The red arrow is April 28th, which is when they rolled out their ivermectin campaign. As you can see, at that time, only 8.9% of the population of India had even one dose of vaccine, and they had only 1.8% even had 2 doses. So the vaccine was not required, was not necessary in order for India to control its problem. They were able to do so just with their treatment kit. Let's see, I guess the next thing I wanted to show, a couple of other things from India's kit that I think are important. One tympanic thermometer, just so you could keep track of your fever. Once your fever goes away, you're doing much better. But one thing that I found very essential is this little device here called a pulse oximeter. Goes on your fingertip, and it shines a little light through your fingertip and measures the light coming out on the other side to see how blue or red your blood is. And it gives you a little readout right there. These you can get them for $50 or less at most pharmacies. Um, I had all of my patients try to get pulse oximeters. Sometimes they were sold out, but I tried to get everybody to get one because I managed all my COVID patients over the internet. It's easy. I've managed hundreds. None of my COVID patients have ever died. Dr. Fauci can't say that. But anyway, I would have them send me an email every day or even more often as needed. And I always ask them, tell me what your oxygen level is. And most of the time they kept pretty good oxygen levels. And that's how I knew that they were going to be okay. And more importantly, they and their family members were reassured because COVID is such a terrifying diagnosis. And you know, their regular doctors, their Kaiser doctors, their Sutter doctors, they weren't helping them at all. They weren't giving them drugs. They weren't telling them to get oximeters. The patients were left, just bewildered about what they were supposed to do about their COVID. So it was very reassuring to them to be able to get a pulse oximeter, put it on, and see that they're doing okay. So very good medically and also psychologically. So as you know, you've had Doctors Tyson and Fareed on your show. They've written a book about how they successfully treated, here they say 7,000 patients, actually up to 10,000 now. And as you know, of those who came to them when they first got sick, while they were early in that yellow phase of things, they had no deaths. I had no deaths among my patients. They had no deaths among theirs. Early treatment is the key. You have to get it before the virus has multiplied, and especially before it attacks your internal organs. And especially once that attack occurs, especially once you get all the blood clots, very, very hard to treat the problem when it gets to that phase. My hat's off to Doctors Tyson and Fareed. I think I'm sure they've treated more COVID patients successfully than anyone else in the world. I would put them in charge of the NIH and the CDC and the FDA if I were the president. So I sort of would wrap up here with a few more comments. So Dr. Fauci not only failed to adopt the early treatments pioneered by Doctors Tyson, Fareed, and others, but he actually actively opposed early treatments, even though those drugs have been widely and safely used for decades in the US to treat other conditions. He and the FDA told the public that these drugs were unsafe for outpatient use for COVID, but they had no evidence at all to back that up. And there were decades of experience that they were safe. This was, in my opinion, outright scientific fraud. But his main argument against these drugs was that they were not effective. And you still see that argument trotted out all the time. Well, there's no evidence that these are effective. Of course, you can show them dozens and dozens of studies showing that they're effective, but they always deny them because they have some technical objection that that they didn't do this or they didn't do that, so therefore we don't accept. They won't accept any studies at all showing effectiveness. But and their particular argument was that they insist on randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials. Nothing short of that will convince them that these are effective. But in my view, the effectiveness argument is a red herring. COVID-19 was a national emergency. The only valid question was whether it was safe. Effectiveness can be settled later. Penicillin was rushed into use in World War II without any randomized double-blind studies. And it was so obvious that it worked under battlefield conditions that they never did any such studies before penicillin was FDA approved. So if COVID drugs were safe, they should have been rushed into the battle. We've lost more than twice as many Americans in the COVID battle as were lost in World War II. The fact that we have not used these safe, readily available drugs for whatever they were worth in the battle against COVID is, in my view, unconscionable, and that some appear to have conspired to prevent their use is, in my view, unforgivable.
Completely criminal.
Some people would put those, many people would put those in the category of war crimes under the
That's
Nuremberg
100%.
principles.
It's 100% a war crime. It's one thing to push a vaccine with side effects. It's another thing to suppress those side effects. It's a whole another bag of worms or can of worms to suppress alternative treatments of generic medications that have been used for decades, cost next to nothing, and have been shown to be effective. That is nothing short of medical genocide. It's what it is.
And I don't want to get too carried away here, but we've been lately accusing Vladimir Putin of war crimes. I'm not, he's only killed a few thousand Ukrainians. I don't think he has anything on Dr. Fauci here, pardon me, but that's just where I am on this.
It's 100% what it is. It's was it 415,000 Americans were killed in World War II? Yeah, it's double that. It's double what the Imperial Japanese with the fascist Italians and what Nazi Germany did. It's factually what it is. That's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration. That's especially when you have guys like Freed and Tyson showing that they can cure 100%. Every death is on his hands then, and everyone that conspired. The heads of Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, those complicit in the media, those complicit in the mandates, they're all guilty.
Yep. And there needs to be a reckoning. There desperately needs to be a reckoning. The institutional accountability here, it's not just a few rotten apples at the top, but obviously there were a lot of people at the NIH, the CDC, and the FDA who never blew any whistles on this. The corruption, I'm afraid, is wide and deep.
If there isn't a reckoning, it's going to happen again. It cannot go unpunished. And not to say punishment for the sake of punishment, but rather you're dooming another generation to this for the next pandemic, whether it's in 2030 or whether it's in 2118. If we don't stop it now and we don't punish it now, it's going to happen again. You cannot let this go untouched. I know it's slipping into the rearview mirror because now it's all about Ukraine. This has to be investigated top down, inside and out. I mean, even the Biden administration stopping the shipments of monoclonal antibodies. It's so clear. It's so clear that they are all in bed with big pharma. Anyone with 2 brain cells can see that. It can't go unpunished.
There has to be a reckoning for all those reasons. And also, I think it dishonors the memory of all those who lost their lives in this. It's to trivialize the deaths of all those people. And it's an insult to their families. The families, they need justice. The dead need justice. The families need justice. That's why we had to have the war crimes trials after World War II.
Mm-hmm.
It just dishonors all those who lost their lives unnecessarily in this fight.
Absolutely, and that's what I think. That's what I think I'm going to be holding you to when you win your race. Is that someone has to do this. I bring it up with every person I have on that's running for Congress. I'm like, hey, the elephant in the room is the Dr. Mengele who's still operating at the head of the United States. If no one has a plan of action against that, that's someone that I can't even passively support. It's so clear. It's so life is never black and white. It's so clearly black and white right now that if I'm interviewing someone who's running for Senate or the House and they don't have an opinion on that, I'll kick them off. You can't come back on. It's that's what it is.
And it's an issue that I don't think you can dismiss it. It's the elephant in the room, as you say, that cannot be dismissed. Everybody knows it's there. It's going to have to be reckoned with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dr. Fox, as we said in our emails, let's set up another episode. I would love to have you back on.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear you bring up war crimes and crimes against humanity because it's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's 2 times the number of American fatalities, not casualties. Fatalities is the entire Second World War. It cannot go unpunished.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to very much look forward to coming back for another chat.
Absolutely.
Thank
My
you, Brian.
platform is your platform. Thank you so much, Dr. Fox. I will put all relative links in the description, and I will send you an email when this episode is uploaded, and we will schedule another episode.
I'll look forward to it.
Thank you, sir. God bless. God bless America. Stay safe.